These unconventional times require unconventional conversations. Listen in as your host, Richard Gordon, engages in one-on-one conversations with numerous leaders, elected officials, politicians, and others to learn what's happening in your state, on the Hill, and across America. Now, here's the host of Unconventional Times, Richard Gordon.
Hello, and welcome to Unconventional Times. I'm your host, Richard Gordon. Thank you for joining us today. You know, we live in an ever-changing world. Today's guest is in the middle of so much of it, whether it's politics and Donald Trump, or other world events, whether it's economics, talking about Bitcoin and economic changes, or his latest endeavor, which is making us all aware of the crisis facing young men and boys. You've seen him, he's all over the place. You can't miss him because literally the mooch is everywhere. So he's a financial guru, the founder and managing partner of Skybridge Capital, a leader in alternative investments, an author, a widely sought after analyst and expert on a wide variety of fields. I'm honored to have my friend Anthony Scaramucci join us today on Unconventional Times. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Richard, thanks for having me. I'm examining these books. You and I share a similar taste. Of course, I'm not talking about my two books behind you, but I'm talking about the Nixon and the Robert Caro books, and I see John Meacham up there related to Thomas Jefferson, and a lot of the same books. So fun stuff.
Yeah, I noticed when I was looking at your bookshelf, I was looking, oh, read that one. Know that one. So it's great to have a good collection. It's actually great to read them. I think you learn a lot from history, and I think we both share that. So, hey, you've done so many things in your life. I was thinking about the show and thinking about all the things we could talk about. I could do an entire program on Bitcoin with you. You know, I could do an entire show on your relationship with Trump and all those things. I could do an entire show on young men and what's going on. But let me start in the beginning, if I may. You know, you write very passionately about your family, about your dad, you know, a strict Italian family, an adoring mother, who I think any of us who grew up with a mother like yours could really relate to. Talk to us a little bit, just to get going, about your upbringing in Long Island and how that shaped you and your decision making and going forward.
Well, I got the Jews and Italians, the difference between Jews and Italians down to two words. Do you want to hear the two words?
Of course.
Summer camp.
Uh,
Okay. I
you
mean, with the
didn't and
Italian,
Jews
what's that?
you didn't and Jews do?
Yeah, the Italians won't separate themselves from the kids. The Jews, like, they let the kids go to summer camp. No problem, right?
That's
I
very
just said
funny.
I just had lunch with one of my best friends. He's like, I can't, kids are starting camp on Wednesday. I said, you see, that's the difference between you guys and us. You know, we don't,
Yep,
no summer camp.
that's very
Other
funny.
than
But
that, I don't think there's really that much different, to be honest, you know.
no, I think there's a
I've been to more bar mitzvahs than I've been to christenings in my life, you know.
That's funny, but so true. So how was it growing up? I mean, you know,
I
well, first of all, Long Island was a bedrock of republicanism back in the day
It was.
and whatnot. But talk to me a little bit about what your
Because
family
it's
instilled in
important.
you.
It's actually important. That's an important point, Richard, if you don't mind me just expounding upon that a little bit. When
Please.
I registered for the draft, I didn't know what part, when you turned 18 on Long Island, you went to the local post office. This is back in 1982. And I registered for the draft and I registered to vote. And I turned to my dad. I said, am I a Democrat or a Republican? He's like, what do you tell you? You're a Republican because Joseph Margiotta,
Joseph, sure, of
If
course.
you grew up on Long Island and you're of our vintage, you know who Joe Margiotta was. He was the our Republican national, not excuse me, not national. He was the Nassau County
County.
Republican Party chair. He ran the county with an iron fist. He got D'Amato elected to the Senate. He was a very strong politician, you know, political operative, not an elected official. And he controlled that union. And so if you were in the union on Long Island, you were a member of the Republican Party. So you bringing up that it was a stronghold is a very important point. People miss that sometimes. They're like, well, why is this guy, if his father was in the union, why
Right.
is he a Republican? Well, because my dad, believe it or not, was a Republican. So but you talk about Long Island growing up back then, we were all in middle class houses. I would never dishonor my folks by telling you I grew up poor, did not grow up poor, but I was in a nice house in Port Washington, close to the elementary school where I attended that school. And I was surrounded by my cousins. There were probably 12 of us in the area. I have an older brother, younger sister, but there were 9 other family members that were contemporaries of mine that were first cousins. And so we were a close-knit family. My uncle at the top of the hill where I grew up on Main Street in Port Washington, he had a motorcycle shop, and it was there from 1953 to the year 2000. And so he spent 47 years at that motorcycle shop. I adored him and worked in that shop. It was great fun. And I guess the thing I would tell you is one thing Hillary Clinton got right. It does take a village. And I
Right.
think you know what I mean. It took my uncle to teach me about entrepreneurship. It took my dad to teach me about his work ethic and his integrity. My dad was a bill payer. He was never a complainer. If there was a bill in front of him, he paid it. If there was a rule in front of him, he abided by it. And he was a serious person, but a very, very hardworking, uneducated person. And then, of course, you talk about my mother. My mother is right out of the movies. Okay, she's Marie from Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, we used to sit around, my brother and I, and said the only thing they did was they dyed that woman's hair blonde. Our mom, of course, is a brunette. At least she was probably back 35 years ago. She's 88 years young,
Oh, wow.
sharp as a tack, and I don't think anybody has perfected the art. You know, Trump wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. My mother has perfected the art of the guilt. Perhaps your mother has too. And so, we live close to her, all of us, and
That's great.
fairly close knit family. I never really left the neighborhood. I'm 2 miles from where I live. I'm in a slightly bigger house, obviously, and it's been a great, it's been a great, it's been a great journey.
I loved in your book when you talk about the Anthony Wall of Fame because I could relate to that and
Yeah.
I could understand from your brother's point of view. My brother's a doctor, so if there was a Wall of Fame, it would be the doctor. So I understand how he felt. One of the things you do touch on in one of your books is anti-Italian sentiment. And I've heard this from a lot of people in New York, a lot of Italian American politicians and whatnot. How did you deal with that? I mean, people don't understand that that existed. And I think unless you live here, unless you have friends who've dealt with it, they don't get it. The reason I'm asking you is because I really think people who are listening to this are going to be surprised.
Well, I mean, that's back in the day, right? So,
Yeah,
so back in the day, the signs in Brooklyn were Nina, no Italians need apply, and of
right,
course they started that sign with the Irish. So the
right.
Irish got here first, no Irish need apply. The Italians got here after the Irish. They didn't have to change the sign. They just said, okay, well we meant Italians too. And so my grandparents, started with nothing. My grandmother worked as a maid. My grandfather eventually ended up as an auto mechanic on that side. My father's family moved to Pennsylvania, where he worked in the coal mine. So it was a hard living. But as my grandparents would tell you, they had an unconditional love affair for the country. They had opportunity here that they didn't have in southern Italy, where they came from, which is why they left. And it's a good thing they left because they built great little enclaves for themselves and their families. And it was an aspirational time in America. My dad was aspirational working class person. We've shifted that. I think I wrote that in the book, The Blue Collar President.
Right.
We've got more anxiety in the country, more working class people that feel desperational as opposed to aspirational today. Real wages are slipping. You and I both know that, and that creates anxiety. It's created anger. It's created populism. But for my grandparents, coming from the old world to the new world, there was a level of excitement, lots of hard work, some ridicule, some racism, some nativism. I mean, that's originally what got me in trouble with Trump. He was saying that these women needed to go back to the countries they originally came from. These are
Right.
American elected officials, 3 of which were born in the U.S., one was naturalized from Africa. These were congressional women from their various districts, but he said they need to go back to the countries that they came from. And so, again, that's American racism, that's American nativism. Charles Lindbergh could have said that. Huey Long could have said that.
Right.
Father Coughlin, if you remember him from your
Of course.
history books, he could have said that. I said on the Bill Maher show, they said that to my Italian American grandmother in the 1920s. It broke her heart. He really shouldn't talk like that. So the fight started with me and Trump. We got over time, over the last 6 or 7 years, see more of Trump's colors. And again,
Right.
not everything is bad about Trump. I'm happy to talk objectively about him. Some of the things he does that I like, some of the things that he does I wish he wouldn't do. But I would say this, that we felt the discrimination here. The Jews felt it, the Irish felt it, African American community, of course, felt it, and particularly if you were living in the South, you were enslaved in this country. So we have to always remember that. I think the big message from the Italian community is don't complain about it. That was a big message from my grandparents.
Work hard and get through.
Work hard and get through. We have a lot of stereotypes in our culture. The mob, the mafia.
Right.
You've got the Jersey Shore, which left us with gym, tan, and laundry.
Right.
There's a lot of different monikers that hit the Italian community. I know there's some Italians that rail against things like The Sopranos. Not me. I was once out with Al Sharpton. I said, listen, what if we had a show on HBO Sunday nights, 9 o'clock? It was called The Jacksons, and we took every African American stereotype, and we had hoes and pimps and
Right.
gold in our teeth and spinners on the Escalades and Glocks and shooting at each other, and we picked out every African American stereotype possible. How happy would you be, Reverend? And he looked at me and he said, no, we wouldn't be happy. It'd probably be a march over something like that. So,
Right.
but the Italians, we made a decision collectively. I don't know why, probably from our grandparents. I think the message culturally for my generation is put your head down and go to work and don't complain.
Right. Look, in another vein, I mean, you've been a huge success. I mean, we all have been following your success for many, many years. But I think a lot of people don't know, and you talk a lot about, when you failed the bar twice.
Yeah.
What'd
Hmm.
you learn from that?
Well, I'm shorter than and not as good looking as John F. Kennedy Jr., but if there was ever a trivia question in Trivial Pursuit or Jeopardy, what do I have in common with John F. Kennedy Jr.? It would be that we both failed the bar twice. And so
Great hair.
that was an immature thing for me. That was an immature, arrogant, punky thing. I was 25, had gone to Harvard Law School. I don't think I ever got a 65 on any exam that I took throughout my academic career. And so I was going to Goldman Sachs. I wasn't going to go work in the law. And I was like, why the hell do I need to do this? My mother, frankly, pressurized me to do it. I was out in Manhasset Bay water skiing for most of the summer, going down to Jones Beach. And in the last 2 weeks prior to the exam, I started studying. And then I was gripped with the fear of, oh my God, this is harder than I thought. You
This
actually
is
really
serious.
need more time for this. And to be precise with you, I got a 65. You need a 66 to get the exam
Oh
to
my.
pass it. I got a 65.6.
Oh,
I missed it by one multiple choice question, and then I ended up failing it. And it was embarrassing. I'm not going to lie, but and then I rushed to take it again. And I thought, okay, I can study a little bit better for it now. I've got it under control, and I failed it. And then 3 years after I left law school, at the age of 28, in February of 1992, I took 2 weeks off from Goldman Sachs and I studied for almost every night prior to that. And then I went and took it in February of 1992 and I passed it because I don't believe I should go to law school and not at least finish that part of it. And so, but I write about it openly because it was a setback. It was a little bit of a arrogance on my part. I think it's 40 years from there. My life, I've been humbled by life. I've been humbled by markets. I've been humbled by some career decisions. But back then, at the age of 25, I was probably too smug for my own good.
does it teach you resilience? Does it teach you something about yourself? Does it
I
teach
think
you about
so.
that you have this inner quality of, first of all, you didn't give up. A lot of people would have given up. You
Yeah,
didn't
well,
give
I
up.
think I think that's the message. I think I'm trying to tell people that in that book. I was like, listen, face your shortcomings. I have tons of them. You don't have enough time in your day for me to give you all my shortcomings. But rather than to complain about them or wish they weren't so or wish I was a better person or a different person, go forward.
Right.
And also you have to forgive other people in your life. I think we learn that from our religious backgrounds. We learn that from different personal philosophies. We certainly learn that, and we forgive people for ourselves more than anything else. But the number one thing we also have to do is forgive ourselves. I mean, I
Right.
don't wake up in the morning and say, "Wow, I got fired from the White House 8 years ago. Let me kick myself in the pants." I'm like, okay, that happened. I did some things perhaps that entitled me to that honor of being fired. I hold myself accountable for the firing. I don't pretend it was anybody's fault other than my own, but I don't sit there and dwell on it. I don't kick myself in the pants. And
Right.
I think if you want to be
Healthier.
resilient, if you want to bounce back, Richard, forgive yourself, get up, dust yourself off, and nobody cares about you. I'm just being honest. Okay, what other people think of you, by the way, is none of your business. And maybe they'll read about you in a tabloid for 5 minutes and then move on to the next thing. They don't
Right.
really care about you. And
Right.
and
Your
therefore
friends do, but they care because they care about you and they want good for you.
exactly.
Yeah. The other
Exactly.
people we don't.
Exactly. There's a small batch of people that do care about you, and God bless them for caring about you.
Right.
But there's an infinitely larger batch of people that don't care about you. Don't worry about what they think. Why be concerned about what other people think? There's a real freedom and there's a real joy in life if you just let things go. That's an honest opinion.
Let me move on to politics a little bit.
Yep.
You had quite a political metamorphosis. You were with Secretary Clinton in 2008. You switched to Obama. After that, you were with Trump in 16. You were with Biden in 20. You were with Harris in 24. What's changed? Has the world changed? Has Anthony Scaramucci changed?
Um, no, I think I think the world that we live in today is ideological. I think the world that we live in today, you have to pick a side, pick an anchor. I like Bill O'Reilly. He lives down
Mhm.
the block from me, obviously the famous conservative pundit.
Right?
Even if he disagrees with certain strictures in the ideology of conservatism, he stays in that lane because you don't want to be perceived as a flip-flopper and you don't want to please that. Megan Kelly has done that. You get in a lane, you stay in the lane, and everything that comes out of your mouth is into that tribe, and you're speaking to your church choir in that tribe. I'm a little bit too diverse intellectually, and I'm a little bit too diverse ideologically to be in that lane. And so if I want to make my money in a media career, Bill and Megan are probably right as much as Rachel Maddow is right in terms of what her lane is, but it's really not my lane. Now, my lane is I'm searching for good people. I'm searching for the right answer. I'm not hard left or I'm not hard right. I'm more about what's right or wrong for the country. So if you ask me about gay marriage, I don't have any problem with it. People should be able to do whatever they want. That's not a hard right position. So other people will be upset about that. If you ask me about a woman's right to her own body and her ability to make her decisions, I think it's okay. And so, well, okay, well now I've lost half of the Republican Party, if
Right.
not all of it, and then all of a sudden you can't. I'm not in an ideological lane. I supported Hillary Clinton primarily, frankly, because one of my clients was very close to the Clintons, asked me to make a donation. I didn't know her well, but
Hmm.
in the spirit of being a good New Yorker, she was running for the Senate. I wrote the check. Barack Obama's a different situation. We went to school together.
Right.
Remember,
You went
this
to
is
Harvard
this yeah,
together.
this is 15, 16 years ago when I wrote that check. It was actually 17 years ago. It was in July of 2007. Then Senator Obama, running for president, gave a great speech at the Union League Club, or maybe actually it was the Metropolitan Club on 60th or 61st Street in New York.
Hmm.
It was a great speech. Knew him in law school. I teased him. I had the check on me. I said, "Hey, Senator," I said, "we knew each other in law school, but really not that well, but I'm about to write you a big check. Can I lie to my friends and tell them that we were really close in law school?" Well, he lit up. He has the best smile in American politics since Jack Kennedy. He lit up and he said to me, "If you double the amount of the check, we'll take it back to Hawaii." And so I did. I doubled the amount of the check, and he was always very good to me. I liked him. Did I like everything about him, Richard? No.
Of course not.
Who does? I mean, you can't find somebody you have a perfect digital fingerprint or political fingerprint with. But I guess the point is, I don't think I've changed, and I just think that yes, the country has changed. We're very tribal. You're gonna get sleeved one way or another. If you're me, you're a flip flopper. You liked Obama and you like Trump, so you must be there must be something wrong with you.
as opposed to have analyzed the people and the issues. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that. Trump wasn't your first choice in 16. You were with Scott Walker, you were with Jeb Bush, but you knew Trump from New York, from your time in business and whatnot. Why were you so reluctant to be supportive?
Well, I wasn't taking his candidacy seriously, so that was a
Yeah,
very mistake by me. I didn't see him be as a serious candidate. I didn't see that working. The country was making a transition that I was tone deaf to. And I would say this to you, Richard, you got to be very careful if you get yourself stuck in an ideological box. And what I mean by that, um, see the world from the confirmed biases of your friends. And if you do that, you're going to miss things in the world. Trump saw something, frankly, in the world that I missed. And that was that the world was ready for a reality television star with very good political instincts to rise to the American presidency. Trump also saw something I didn't see. These are no longer hiring decisions. These are popularity contests. And
right.
so you can call somebody big or fat. You can call somebody low energy. You can call somebody lying. You can come up with all these nicknames and this cadence of ridicule, and it's going to serve your interest politically. You can even talk about women's body parts,
Right.
and you can say you're going to grab them in a certain way, and it has no effect on your candidacy. It has no effect on your efficacy. Trump is a convicted felon. Trump has perjured himself. Trump has a $400+ million sex suit against him, damages that he has to
Right.
pay. All the indictments have been dropped because he won't run the presidency, but he was part of the premeditation of that insurrection. He obviously called the Secretary of State in Georgia asking for more votes in that election. So there's stuff about him, but hey, he's famous, and fame matters now a lot more than we thought. And so in 2016, when he was running, I didn't think he was going to win. I don't think he thought he was going to win. In fact, on November the 8th, election day, none of us thought he was going to win, but he won.
Right.
And so
I
now
think he was as shocked as anybody. I remember him walking
I
on the
think he,
stage at 3 o'clock in the morning and the look on his
listen,
face.
he told me he was going to go play golf the next day. He was going to fly to Scotland and go play golf. He didn't have the expectation to win.
Right.
But they've done him a great service. The best thing that Trump has going for him, Richard, are the Democrats. They put up Hillary Clinton. They didn't give Joe Biden a chance to run. Barack Obama stopped Joe Biden from running.
You
So he
think
didn't give him
Biden
a
could have
chance.
won?
Well, he would have been more competitive. He would have been
Hmm.
more competitive. Yeah, he was a younger Joe Biden at the time. Let me say this: in 2020, he beat an incumbent president.
Oh,
Now,
you mean in
grant,
16?
yeah,
In
16.
16,
No, in
not this time.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, I'm talking about Barack Obama telling Joe Biden,
Yeah.
the 66-year-old version of Joe Biden, you cannot run.
Yeah.
And
Right.
here are the reasons why you can't run. Let me give you the exact number. He's probably 68 or
Yeah.
69,
Well, he
actually, at
just
the
lost
time.
his son. It was a tough time.
Tough time, but he wanted to run for president, and
Yeah.
Obama told him no, and that he was supporting Hillary Clinton and get off the stage. You know?
I find, let me ask you a question before I ask you that, because you
Hmm.
sort of brought it up. It's shocking to me, and I wasn't going here, but it's shocking to me that Trump could say whatever he wants to say
Hmm.
compared to what you said back in 2017.
Yeah.
I mean, what you said is trivial in comparison to
Yeah, but I think if it's, you
this.
see people, this is the weird thing about Washington. The front story
Yeah,
is sometimes accurate to the whole story, and sometimes the front story is not accurate. So what was really happening was the firing got blamed on my interview with the reporter.
sure.
And if you were going to put a pie chart together and say how much of a contribution was that to my firing, could it have been 5%, maybe 10%? I got fired because I was at odds with Trump in the White House. I was at odds with Trump with certain decisions. I was at odds with Trump with certain statements. He wanted me to make certain statements to the American people that I was not comfortable with. I also said a few things to him in disagreement with him. And I unfortunately was treating my job like I treated the campaign, which was to be open with him, which was to not be combative, but let's say you and I were on the campaign together, you're the principal. Do you want to hear my opinion or do you want me to uh, be a sycophant to you? Do you want me to just
Right.
overly be obsequious to you and praise you in every which way? And during the campaign, believe it or not, he did not want that. He was a lot looser, he was a lot less uptight, and he wanted to hear your thoughts. And a lot of times you could move him. If you said, hey, I think that's a stupid idea, and here's why, he would look at you. And if he agreed with you, he would change positions. And so I took that idea of my relationship with him
And it
into,
could continue even
yeah,
though he
and that
was
was a big
president.
mistake. That was a big
Interesting.
mistake because the whole dynamic shifted.
Right.
And he was also at that time somewhat insecure. He still is today, but he was way more then. And so I challenged him a few times and got fired.
I have to say, I'm fascinated by him. We were in New York for years. We all knew who he was. But I find the guy we see, I find we don't really know who he is. And
Yeah.
you brought up one of your classmates, Barack Obama, and you brought up one of my classmates, and you didn't realize it, Bill Maher.
Hmm.
Bill and I went to high school together.
Hmm.
Um, I don't feel we know Donald Trump. And when Bill Maher said what he said about the president, having dinner with him and enjoying it, he was friendly and funny. And I think the whole world just stopped and said, who is he talking about?
Yeah.
Because that's
Hmm.
not the person we see. So, Anthony,
Hmm.
what I'm really interested in is this guy. You're on the campaign trail in the White
Hmm.
House, you're known for business. I don't think we know who he is. I think you know who he is. And I'd love to hear your thoughts because I struggle with you present him in one of your books in the Trump biography as a guy who's authentic. But then you also describe him, and we see him as an actor, as just playing a role. And when Bill Maher was talking about the guy he met in the White House and the divergence between Donald Trump, White House guy, Donald Trump behind the scenes, I think a lot of us are shocked and we're left with a sense of who are we really talking about? Who is Donald Trump? I'd love your views on that.
So he's all of that. And when you ask his voters, they find him authentic. He could tell 90 lies. That's part of his authenticity. Remember, being a liar doesn't make you inauthentic. It's authentic to yourself. He's a car salesman. He's going to tell you 90 lies. People enjoy it. They like the lying. I mean, that's the big irony of it because, we learn from Homer. The Homer explains to us that we don't like the truth. Aaron Sorkin took that and put it in a few good men, but it came from Homer. It's from the story of Cassandra, where she was blessed by the clairvoyance from the gods. She could see the future, but she was also cursed that no one would believe her. And so Trump understands this better than anybody. So part of his authenticity is his lying. People sometimes conflate those things. Say, well, you're not authentic if you're a liar. No, that's not true. You can be an authentic liar. There's a charm to Donald Trump. Like it or dislike it, there's a lot of people that find him charming, a lot of people that find him engaging. And also, Trump understands the grievance of a good portion of our fellow Americans. They felt left out, they feel economically desperational. He represents them, he's an avatar for their anger. So at the same time that you have that going, you have some of Trump's malevolence and you have some of Trump's, when you say you don't know him, I think there's a lot of repressed feelings in there. He's angry about something. There's an
Mm.
open wound there. The need for external validation is unending there. Maybe there's a sore spot with his mom or dad, or maybe something
Growing up in
yeah,
Queens
yeah,
and
maybe
not being
some, yeah,
respected.
maybe growing up in
Um,
Korea's not being respected, or some type of combustible rage there that he wants to take out on other people. I see it. Other people see it, but a lot of people, frankly, 70 or 80 million of these people voted for it.
right.
And
You
that's
talk
that's the
about
difference.
you talk about how he likes to shock people. I mean, is there value to that? I have a constant argument with my friends on this. So when he says something like they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Okay, outrageous. But there's a message there, and the message is immigrants, migrants, they're really weird and different than you and me. And I think that's the message a lot of people see. So does he say things outrageously just for the conflict, just to be in the press? Or is there a hidden message, a political
Yeah,
message that
both.
he's trying to
Yeah,
deliver?
both. So he's
So
saying
you
it
think
to
he's
be
thought about it?
no question. No, no. He's the Napoleon of the culture war. He's a great strategist. He knows how to fight the culture war better than anybody. And if you remember your political biography or your military biography, Napoleon could see the whole field. He could see the whole battlefield. He could assess what's going on. He was 5 moves ahead of his fellow generals, and he was winning these battles primarily because of that anticipatory genius. And Trump has that. The other thing that Trump has, again, whether you like it or dislike it, he can get your attention. He can say something with a kernel of truth in it that can trigger people. You have 10 women or ten transgender people that went to compete in women's sports.
Right.
Think about that. He turned that into a $250 million ad for his presidential campaign because he knew it was a cultural pivot point for a lot of people and it was going to trigger anger in the people that live on the buckle of the Bible Belt, and they were going to turn out and vote for him. So he does understand this. This is all premeditated. People think because he talks like a fifth grader that he's not smart. He talks like a fifth grader for a reason. He's trying to reach people that have fifth grade educations.
But when you're with him alone, is it different?
More charming, more relaxed.
Yeah.
Your friend Bill Maher from high school would tell you that I think Bill called him an orange orangutan, and then he got
Right.
sued by him. And then Bill brought with him a piece of paper where he had a whole list of things that Trump had said about him, and Trump signed it for him as they were having dinner. And Bill found him charming, and he found him engaging, and he found him less in stage behavior, less stagecraft, and more sort of a relaxed version of Donald Trump. I've seen both of those people. I know how charming Trump can be. I don't think we should demonize him. I think we should. I think there's great danger when we take human beings and we go black or white. Here's the angel and here's the devil. No, Trump has done some smart things. I think closing the border was one of them, by the way. Most of the American
Mhm.
people are with him on that. I don't think we want a lot of illegal immigration at this time of stress in our country, particularly when we have these outside threats. I think by and large, if the Iranians uh, don't hit back and you tell me that we knocked out their nuclear facilities, I think most Americans are like, well, a non nuclear Iran would be better. Now, I don't believe that, by the way. I believe they moved that fissile material. I believe that they're getting help from the Russians. I would find it improbable, if not impossible, if they haven't been sold a few nukes. So the
Right.
notion that they
Right.
don't have nukes, and even Putin said that yesterday, well, we're going to give them nukes. Well, I think he's already given them nukes. So
Well,
I
just
think,
as we were coming on, I think I saw very quickly that they have already hit an American base. I don't know what the damage is, but I think they have hit something that one of our
yeah, they hit it.
bases.
They hit an American base in Qatar.
Right.
Trump has already come out and said, Trump has already come out and said that he's not going to retaliate. That it was insubstantial damage to the American base. He would like to de-escalate. He's not going to retaliate. So listen. I think this was a effort to support Netanyahu and an effort to support Israel. I am a, you know, I'm a staunch believer in our alliance with Israel. I'm a staunch believer in the survivability of the Jewish state.
You've always been a strong supporter of Israel. I
I
mean, throughout
have,
your
and I'm a
career,
very,
everything you've
very,
ever said or ever done.
yeah, very,
It's
very
how we
outspoken.
met.
Yeah, I'm very outspoken about it. I've traveled there many times. I would just say, if I'm being brutally honest with my friends, it would be like being objective with my friends. I want my friends to tell me I have a booger in my nose or I have bad breath. Those are good friends.
Right.
I would just say what I worry about with Israel is the world opinion. You have to be very careful on brand management because if you said to me 10 years ago, what does Israel represent? It represents a oasis of democracy in the Middle East. It's a very well fortified country with a very vibrant, very dynamic venture capital business. So much so that they're spending more on venture capital investing in the state of Israel. 7 or 8 million people live there, as opposed to all of continental Europe with its 500 million people.
Wow.
And so Israel's an economic dynamo. Israel is a font of economic innovation. And today, though, as a year, it's more than that. It's going to be almost 2 years now since October 7th. I think there's a lot of death and destruction taking place in Gaza. Some of it is justified and understandable. Some of it, I think, is up against the line of things. And I think it's causing a lot of international concern and it's hurting Israel's brand. And again, I'm just being honest about that. Somebody, you could push back on me. If Netanyahu was here, he would probably push back on me. But I'm just saying, I would be honest with him. I said, look at the optics of this. This is hurting your brand. And you don't want to hurt your brand. It's not necessary to hurt your brand. You got very strong allies that are going to help you ensure your survivability. But starving people on international news channels is not a winning brand for Israel. Now, if you're telling me the Iranians are a threat to you, I accept the Iranians at their word. They've said for 46 years they want to take Israel off the map. I accept the fact that Hamas is a proxy for Iran, Hezbollah. I accept all of that. I understand why Israel needs to fight Iran, fight the principle when they have all these various proxies doing their dirty work in the Middle East. And again, I didn't want the strike. I didn't think it was necessary because I already think they've moved the stuff. I think they've moved the radioactive material. I don't think the damage that we cause is necessarily stopping them. It's good symbolism. It perhaps helped Netanyahu at home, but I
So
don't. I
why
don't think.
Trump do it? Is that why he did it?
I think he
Do
did
you
it to
think it's?
help.
I'm curious about Trump's.
Yeah.
We could spend a whole show on Israel. I mean, my thing on
So
Israel.
I'll give you
Worked.
I'll give you
I've
the
worked with.
briefing.
I'm,
I'll
I'm
give you
sorry.
I'll give you the briefing. You want to hear the briefing?
Well, I was just gonna say I've worked with them for years on their. They call it a hasbara, which is we try to call it public relations. They don't get what we get about how to position themselves. They don't think like that. So please go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, but I listen, I want them to succeed, you know.
Yeah.
They're my friends. I want them to succeed. I want the country to flourish. I will say this about Israel. I think Israel is for peace. If you don't attack them on October 7th, there's no war in Gaza.
Right.
Okay, they just want to live peacefully on the land that they have, and the country's sanctioning its arrival into the United Nations, all of that sort of stuff. That gives them the right to succeed and gives them the right to exist. I guess it was 1948 or whatever it is. But the briefing went something like this. We have these sites in mind. There may or may not be enriched in uranium in those sites now. These sites have the capacity to enrich uranium. We have these, but we're going to hit those sites. It'll probably be more symbolism than anything else, but it'll certainly help Netanyahu, and it'll certainly let the world know that we're friends with Israel. And I think that's how the decision got made. It's not clear to me. Tulsi Gabbard is not a liar. Okay,
Right. She said
she
there was nothing there.
she said there was nothing there, and I believe her, and the I believe the intelligence on this issue. Now, Trump said, "Oh, we can't believe her, cut her out of the Situation Room. That's fine. They can let her go for telling the truth. That's fine. That happens in politics all the time." But they hit the sites. Hopefully, there isn't an overreaction by Iran. And again, you got to just hope that even if you're a religious fanatic, you don't want to use an atom bomb on innocent people.
Right.
I hope we don't do that. We have 80 years now where we're not doing that, and I hope that continues.
How does he make decisions? You talk about how he doesn't work in a precise way, that he has a different working style than most of us. How does he make a decision like this?
Well, I think there's some triggering that can happen with him. I think it's if it's in his field of vision and it defines his self-identity, I think he could be influenced. So if you said to me, "Hey, we've had great success hitting targets in Iran. You could help us finish the job with these bunker busters. They're your bombs, not ours. You're our ally. If you hit these other things, I think it's going to make you look really good to the rest of the world. No one's going to want to do it. Lots of reluctant politicians are going to say that they didn't want to do it, but secretly, they're going to want this risk taken off of the table. And you have an opportunity to contribute to my already seen success. And so all you have to do is hit the backboard with the basketball and dunk it, and you can be OKC.
Superstar.
You can win the championship like they did last night. The Thunder did, and I think that's an overly compelling, overly tempting thing for these guys. And I think that's something that was in Trump's field of vision, and he hit it. He
He
hit
did
it.
it. I
Mhm.
got to tell you something. I don't talk about this much, but back in 2009, maybe, I had a private meeting, just me and Netanyahu. And he told me back then, no, it had to be before that, 2008, he told me then that he thought the United States should go bomb Iran and take it out, and that he wished he could do it, but he didn't have the ability to do it, both militarily and for other reasons. But it just makes me wonder whether he's just been waiting to find the right American president to do it, and he found him.
Right. So
So,
so listen, like I said, it happened. I'm a friend of Israel's. I love our troops. I'm glad our troops are safe. I want the reprisals to be minor, if at all. Maybe the attack on these missile strikes are the end of it. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to bring down the electrical grid in the U.S. I don't know. Maybe they're going to do something more egregious. I don't know. Remember, they have allies too.
of
And
course,
so, and their allies don't want to get into too big of a fight with the U.S. They want to antagonize us, but they want to do it through proxies more than they want to have an overt kinetic war with the
exactly.
United States. And just a reminder, everybody, the Russians have 4,000 aircraft. We have 14,000 aircraft. There's nobody in the world that has a B-2 bomber or a bunker buster bomb. Nobody's got it. We have it. Yes, there are people that have nuclear weapons, but once we start using those, we can
Yeah,
we
we
can
don't want to go
forget,
down this
we can
slope.
forget the Earth. We could be the creature on the planet that caused its own demise and self-destruction. I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that it won't.
Let me switch gears completely. I really want to talk about Lost Boys, and I mean, we could talk about Trump for the rest of our lives, but I think Lost Boys is really important, and it's something I encourage everyone who's listening to this to please listen to your podcast with Scott
Thank you.
Galloway. It's really important stuff. Um, why'd you take it on? Why is it so personal? What made you do it? Why now?
Well, because I think there's an epidemic right now. I think the culture has gone against men. So if you were, let's just talk as candidly as we can. My grandmother was still alive, God rest her soul. She'd say, Anthony, it's a man's world.
Hmm.
Okay. And you remember that cliche. And
Very
then
recently.
and then, right, exactly. And then maybe it still is a man's world, but then we've had the women's movement, the feminist mystique. And then we had the woke movement where we're trying to make people aware and wake up to the various indignities and racisms, racial suppression, character stereotypes, and whatnot of different people. And a result of which we're trying to correct something where white males have had a great advantage over multiple decades, if not centuries. At the same time that we're doing that, we're hitting a group of people through no fault of their own, happen to be born white male. And so, to quote Scott Galloway, if I've got 75 advocacy groups at NYU, not one of them are here's the white male advocacy group. And so, if you look at the hiring practices, you look at what people are trying to do in terms of achieving diversity and equity and inclusion and all these things, I'm not against Richard. I'm just for the idea of equality for everybody. I have four sons. I
Right.
think we're hurting their self esteem. I think they're hurting their self identity. I think we're undercutting some levels of their masculinity. And the result of which Scott and I are in agreement. We put a 10-part mini series together to discuss this, but also to discuss the pros and cons of it. We've had Richard Reeves on, we've had psychologists, sociologists. We've also had women on to say that we're full of it, that white men deserve their comeuppance at this point. But I'll leave you with this thought that you should really consider. Age 14 to 34, you're 30% more likely to commit suicide. Think about that for a second.
Mm,
That's a massive
that's
problem.
horrible.
Yes. Hmm.
But why can't we pick someone up. I mean, Jesse Jackson used to have a great line I remember was don't look down unless you're looking to pick me up, right?
Right, right.
Why can't we pick up people
It's a great
without
idea,
putting
great
down
concept.
people? Why can't women get what they rightfully deserve? And let's be honest, for thousands of years, women did not get what they rightfully deserve. And it's time for women to be treated completely equally in the economy, in education, in every place. But why, by picking up a woman, do you, by definition, put down a man?
I mean, it is such a great idea. It's such a great concept. And that's really what all we're calling for with this 10-part limited mini series, this 10-part podcast. We're just saying, hey, what Jesse Jackson is saying is correct. Because we were racist against blacks, let's not go reverse racist against whites now. Because we under hired women, let's not flatten out and totally destroy the self esteem of white men. All I'm calling for is some semblance of equality without grievance.
Where do you think this is going? I mean, part of the thing that really makes me extraordinarily nervous is the complete reversal, the complete change in who's going to college. And it used to be almost 60-40 men, women. It's now almost it's 56 to whatever the other way, 56-44 or something.
Hmm.
What's going to happen long term? I mean, women are going to go to college, people meet people in college, etc. There's a big article in yesterday's New York Times about, women going out, and there are only women out because men don't
Hmm.
go on dates anymore and men don't
Hmm.
engage anymore. Where are we going? I mean, how is this
Well,
going to
there's,
work
I mean,
out?
I have all those statistics. They're staying at home. They interact rarely with women. If they're going to go out on a date, they usually ask somebody over a text. They break up with the person over a text. They're in the basement playing video games. If they have the off chance of getting the job, they're usually in a remote location doing the job. And so all of this has led to this dysfunctional communication among men and women. So all of that stuff that you're saying is true. But when you say where is it going, I don't know where it's going, but I can tell you where I want it to go.
Because this
Or
can't be safe for society.
no, because look at the suicides rate. Look at that Netflix special called Adolescence, where the young kid is getting cyberbullied, he's getting bullied. He goes on and murders one of his classmates, his middle school classmates, and now he's going to be tortured for the rest of his life because we've lost our capacity for empathy towards each other. We've learned through social media that we can cloak our hatreds through our anonymity. So we can put up John Q 76 and we can rip into Richard Gordon and Anthony Scaramucci indiscriminately and from our basements, but we probably wouldn't have done that, frankly, if we were face to face with Richard Gordon or Anthony Scaramucci. So for me, Richard, I want to get people out of that mode. I want to get people comfortable with the idea that they can get out more and they can be more sympathetic and more empathetic to each other. And I want to get that suicide rate down. And so if you're saying to me, where is it going? I don't know, but where do I want it to go? Is more openness, more interpersonal communication. And if someone is not feeling well, or if someone is not happy and they're filtering their life and taking great selfies and pictures of themselves and putting it on Facebook and taking pictures of ribeye and tomahawk steaks that we're supposed to be impressed with, but they go home miserable and they're contemplating ending their lives because of their despair. I want them comfortable with breaking down the stigma associated with that, and I want them comfortable with getting help
Well,
because
thank you for what you're doing on
there's
this.
life on the other side, and we want people to be healthy.
This is important stuff. Let me ask you a couple of really quick questions. I'm going to let you go. Future of the Republican Party. Is it going to be the Trump Party, or is the Republican Party going to readjust and go back to the Bush Party, the basic conservative party?
I don't know the answer to that question, honestly. I think Trump is a personality. I think the party now is MAGA, is a personality cult around Trump. When they ask him what are the principles of MAGA, he says, and again, don't go by me. I'm just quoting him. Whatever I want them to be.
Right.
So if I want to attack Iraq, well, that's it. If I say before during the campaign, we're not going to do that, no more forever wars, So he's a man that can change his mind on a dime. That's MAGA. It's less principled than the Republicans are used to. And so I don't know if it's a personality cult and MAGA represents that, then MAGA will be transformed. It'll be like going into that machine. You remember that movie when you and I were kids called The Fly with Jeff Goldblum?
Oh God, yeah.
You're going to go into the machine and maybe there'll be one part MAGA and one part old traditional Republican Party. We'll have to see who emerges.
Well, you'll come out as a big insect, which is
Yeah,
what happened in
exactly.
that
Yeah.
movie. You got to see the original. The originals with Vincent Price is even better.
Yeah. So there you go.
If you haven't, want to take a shot at who the nominees in 28 are?
Well, it won't be Rubio
Won't be.
and it won't be JD Vance.
Okay. How about on the
Yeah.
Democratic side?
I think it'll be Newsom.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It won't be those two because they're too close to Trump and he likes to eat his young. He's a praying mantis. Among
Yeah.
all the other different job titles that he has, he'll eat their faces off before we get to the end of his term.
Last question. Greatest fear, greatest hope.
I think every parent's greatest fear is that something happens to their children. I don't think there's anything else. I think you know that. I know that. If you have kids, you worry about them all night. And my greatest hope is that somehow, some way, we figure out ways to make the world better. The world's better today than it was 100 years ago. I think it's better than it was 200 years ago. And I think 100 years from now, the world will be better than it is today. Not that it won't have problems. We're human beings.
Right.
We're frail and we're subject to making lots of mistakes, but better. I think better is better.
Well, listen, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all you're doing. I'd love to have you on again. I'd love to talk just about
That'd be
Bitcoin
awesome.
with you.
Anytime.
Well, I
Anytime.
appreciate that.
It's
So, Anthony,
really, really nice to have you accept me and bring me on. I'm sorry I was a couple minutes late, but thank you.
oh, please, good. Delighted. I say this to all my guests, but you're the one guest I don't really have to say this to. Anthony Scaramucci, stay unconventional.
All right.
So,
You got it.
thank
I
you.
promise.
Thank you very much. So listen, we learned a lot today from Anthony Scaramucci, and I really recommend the podcast. It's really good. I recommend his books. The bio on Trump is really good. It's a few years old, but it makes really compelling reading now. His books on Bitcoin and hedge funds, I learned a ton. So I recommend all of that to you. Look, as we've been talking about today, the United States just bombed Iran's nuclear reactors, and we all share one thought today, and that is for peace. And so let us hope that that brings us a step closer to the goal we've been talking about today. So we thank Anthony Scaramucci again. Thank you all for listening. You could find us on any podcasts, on any of the Apple or Spotify, any of those. You could find us on YouTube at UT-Richard Gordon. So thank you again for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time. Stay unconventional.
You've been listening to Unconventional Times with your host, Richard Gordon. Check out all of the episodes of Unconventional Times on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Richard Gordon and all of his unconventional conversations, head on over to unconventionaltimes.com. Thanks for listening.